Mrs. Haslam, governors, teachers, proud parents, and my fellow Withington girls, especially those of you who are about to embark on the next chapter of your lives, the class of 2024. You look so beautiful. It's weird being back up here at the Bridgewater Hall. I was just thinking about my own founders' days, and we used to sit down there, we used to put our 10 fingers on our knees and rate the sixth formers' walks as they went across the stage out of 10, which is not an invitation to do the same about this speech, by the way. Mrs. Haslam, thank you so much for the invitation. It really is the highest honour for a former Withington girl. So I did wonder whether you might prefer me to come back in 10 or 20 years when hopefully I might have achieved more, but here I am, so it means the world and I'll give it a go. It reflects the strength of the bonds I formed at Withington, that two of the girls who were in my row, making mischief with their fingers on their knees, are here today. They were at my wedding, and we're beside each other in each other's corners through our careers and relationships as women. Sat next to them is another friend, my old politics teacher, Mrs. Harris, who I still can't bring myself to call Colleen, even though I left school in 2009. I'll let you do the maths. Not only has she been my partner in crime, trawling the charity shops around the world, she instilled my love of what she used to call, quoting Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, events, dear boy, events, which I went on to study as a history undergraduate at Cambridge and chronicle now for a living as a journalist. Next to Mrs. Harris are my parents, and I hope you can indulge me a moment to thank them. Both of them, but in particular my mum. My Withington education wouldn't have been possible without my bursary, or without the endless hours of overtime my mum worked, the years she sacrificed any sort of treats for herself in order to give me the best possible start in life. I know that there'll be parents in the audience today who are scraping together everything you've got to send your daughters to Withington, in a political climate in which that sense of aspiration sometimes seems like a sin. To you, I say, you're giving your daughters an incredible gift. They might complain about the homework at the academic hothouse now, but one day they'll thank you for the character your efforts paid to nurture. Allow me here also to pay tribute to former headmistress Marjorie Hume, whom sadly, as Mrs. Haslam says, we lost earlier this year. She started the Withington Bursary in 1976, and her legacy continues to make a difference to the life of all of us bursary girls. Which brings me on to what I want to share with you today. At the dinner table in my house, the most recurrent theme of conversation between my husband and me is how one day, when hopefully we have them, we'll give our children grit, given they'll begin life with a head start on us. We were both the first in our families to go to Cambridge, and actually my husband's achievement is a greater one than mine, though I'd never tell him this to his face, because he was also the first from his school. So in a way, I've rehearsed this speech many times before, only I imagined I was giving it to my own daughters. And here's what I'd tell them. It's exactly what my headmistress, Mrs. Pickering, told us, quoting the poet Robert Frost. Take the path less travelled. Your purpose in life is not to become a clone of your parents, to coast along or pursue a life of comfort. That is not what the privilege of a Withington education is for. Handbags, holidays and houses are not success, though they may be the happy spoils of it. Rather, you are here to make a difference in the way that only you can. but the shape of that difference may not yet be obvious. When I was at Withington, I dreamt of studying politics, philosophy and economics at Oxford, for no nobler reason than I'd heard it was the hardest degree to get in for. So I fully deserved it when, despite my clean sheet of 8 stars, I was rejected without an interview. As it transpired, that failure was the best thing that ever happened to me. Without it, I wouldn't have found the resilience to defy my parents and take a gap year, modelling around the world, so that I could work and travel concurrently and reapply to Cambridge for history. Without that rejection, I also never would have met my husband. Having returned to modelling in New York after graduation, I realised that as dazzling and delightful as the fashion industry was, it wasn't where I would make my mark. Frankly, I felt lost. In that era, models were seen but not heard. And as was always the case at Withington, I had something to say. I'm blessed to have found in journalism what I understand to be my calling. But when I started talking about maybe giving journalism a go, once again, my parents had their worries. Girls, let me tell you, they worry because they love you. What about law? My parents said. Mum suggested that I could earn a steady salary as an air hostess. To appease her, I tried a 9-month spell on the Aldi graduate scheme, managing supermarkets in Swindon, and I genuinely feared that I would die, either of boredom or because I was so useless someone had locked me in the freezer. Once again, I failed hard, and I was asked to leave. Look, there's nothing wrong with any of those careers, but once again, it was time to take a bet on myself. I believed I had in my hand a unique set of cards to play. The on-air performance skills I'd learned in fashion, the analytical rigour I'd honed at Cambridge, the bluntness to get to the crux of a matter, the sensitivity to smell a lie, the obsessiveness to dig into the detail, and the persistence never to take no for an answer. You can guess where I got that from. I wagered I could use that hand as a journalist to hold people in power to account. So I'm proud that markets were the guardrails on democracy when Liz Truss, as Prime Minister, tried to cut taxes for the richest in society, while sidelining the economic institutions of the UK and not explaining how she would pay for her plans. In a space of weeks that also saw me reporting from outside Buckingham Palace on the death of Queen Elizabeth II, I got to document live on Bloomberg TV from outside the Bank of England and Downing Street how Liz Truss crashed the British economy. Bloomberg's audience, financial traders, responded to that news by sending the pound so low and the cost of government borrowing so high that Liz Truss had no choice but to admit defeat. We, in the world of economic journalism, held politicians to their fiscal responsibility. I feel it's what I was born to do. And yet, I hadn't even heard of the US-based global financial news organisation Bloomberg when I was at Withington, which says to me that you need to follow your own strengths, passions and values to get to where you're meant to be in life. Girls, if there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this. I'm going to quote the conclusion to my favourite TV show now. My classmates will know the one, and so too maybe will some of the mums. Here goes. The most exciting, challenging and significant relationship of all is the one you have with yourself. So listen to yourself. Use your failures to teach you who you are. And whichever path you take, if you walk it your way, 10 out of 10 you're bound to make a difference. That is what this wonderful Withington education is for. Good luck.